C225, and just this past year we had to reaffirm it. So in the way the CSA works, you either vote to change it, or you reaffirm where it is right now and carry on. And what we want to do is carry on with the way it stands right now, so it's still valid with it, and we are working towards a reissue. Hopefully sometime within the next 2 or 3 years we'll get the next issue of it. We have a meeting tomorrow up at the CSA offices up by the airport. We usually schedule that because a lot of us are here at the CUF meeting, and we always have it the day after CUF ends with it if we can. This will be the first time since COVID that we've actually had a face-to-face meeting of this committee. So it's going to be great to see faces again and not have to watch people on a screen as we're talking with it. So one of the big things that we'll be looking at is harmonization with the ANSI A92.2, the American version of our standard as well. We try to harmonize between what we have. They look at what we have and they can make changes. We look at what they have and we can make changes to ours, so everyone's on the same page when we're building, manufacturing, testing, and operating aerial devices. I was at the ANSI A92 meeting last September in Vegas with it, and they were going over some of the things that they're going to be looking at for their next issue with it as well. So we have representation from the A92 committee that sits on the C225 committee, just as we have C225 members sitting on the A92.2 committee too as well with it. Our standard right now involves vehicle-mounted aerial devices. That's all it covers. But the current standard, CB 354.6, also covers self-propelled man lifts, and those are mobile articulating and mobile elevating work platforms with it. But they also include vehicle-mounted aerial devices, which is a conflict with us. We've been around since 1978, I believe, is the very first CSA 225 standard that came out with it. And we've always been the leader in the development of standards here in Canada. This is our national standard, C225, for vehicle-mounted aerial devices. And so there's been an ongoing conflict with 354 where they have it in their scope, the same thing as we have in our scope. And we don't want to have any conflicts with that. With it, people don't want to have to know, geez, what standard should I be building my aerial device to, or what standard should I be speccing my aerial device to when I'm buying it, which is probably the more important thing, because you want to make sure that if anything ever happens, the standard of care that you have to hold on to is the right standard. So we've been working on that for some years. We'll be carrying on again with that this year too, with the cooperation of CSA, because they're both CSA standards with it. Another thing that comes into play really is the international standards. Canada is a signatory to the International Standards Organization, the ISO. We're also a signatory to the IEC, the International Electrical Commission with it. I actually represent Canada on that standard as well with it, but they have effect on what we want to do too. If Canada's going to be signatory to these international standards, we have to make sure that we follow what they want us to do too. We are allowed to deviate from those standards, as many nations do. New Zealand, for example, Australia, Israel, all have deviations from the ISO standards and the IEC standards to suit their national requirements. And that's what we do here in Canada too as well. So the meeting tomorrow, very early on after we issued the standard in 2020, it was brought to our attention by SAS Power and Manitoba Hydro that geez, there's some errors in here that didn't get copied right from the previous standard, and they were in the testing tables that we go by with what our test voltages are supposed to be with it for different categories of units. And as soon as that came, folks says, you're absolutely right. We made a mistake. It just got transcribed wrong, or didn't get caught on the proofread of it all. And problem is to change a standard now becomes kind of difficult. If it's a technical thing, you almost have to reissue the entire standard to do that. So what we're going to be doing, and we've already approved this, we at our last meeting that we had back in January, I think it was, we said we have to make those changes, and those changes were approved for the next issue. So the next issue will come on. In the meantime, if you have any question at all on what's going on here, look at the table 1 and testing for aero devices from the 2010 issue. Everyone, all the labs around here know that anyways already, but if you're questioning why their test report might say as per CSA 225 2010, it's because those are the correct test voltages. So there's nothing we don't have to worry about with it. The other thing we want to do is some clarifications on things with it. One of the questions that was brought by in Canada was some of the standards require, or manufacturers require, a parking brake to be applied before you can operate the aero device. We don't have that in the standard right now. Actually, it's a damn good idea with it. So we're always open to good ideas with it. And we said, okay, let's look at that. And that's one of the things that we're going to be discussing at the meeting tomorrow, whether this should be instituted into it. I believe the same thing is happening with the A92, if it's not already in it or being set up for their next issue as well with it. And then, of course, there's the ongoing harmonization with the A92.2. I've seen some of what they're looking for with it, as have some of the other members of the committee, and we'll be discussing those. Some we agree with, some we'll discuss as to do we really want to do that here in Canada with it, and we are allowed deviations from that. It won't affect really how the machine is made. So some of those discussions regarding testing, but not how they're going to be made. So let's look at A92.2. The latest issue was 2021. It is under review for the next edition. I'm not sure how long it's going to take them to make their one at the meeting in September in Vegas. There was a long list of items that were being discussed, and they didn't get through the whole list with it. So they've scheduled another meeting. I'm not sure quite when that's going to happen yet. Al, have you heard anything more about the next A92 meeting? No? Okay. Alain Cochin sits on the committee too as well. Bob Moore recently resigned from the A92 committee for it. So Chris Jeans is also on the A92 committee as well, but he's not here today either for you to ask. So we'll find out. So as I said, we've got 225 members also involved on it. I'm not a member yet. I've applied for full membership on it to replace Bob Moore, who resigned withdrew from the committee with it. But I haven't been selected yet for it yet. So they're obviously looking at my criminal history, but and who I voted for, but or who I would have voted for. But so. I was asked if I could do some coverage on the B354.6 committee too, a standard as well. There's some argument whether, okay, does C225 only apply to insulated air devices? No, it doesn't. It applies to vehicle-mounted air devices. You don't have to be an insulated air device to comply with C225. On the B354.6. It specifically says that insulating air devices are not within its scope, and they reference C225 if you're going to have an insulated air device. But we don't say in ours that if you're non-insulated, you have to reference 354.6. And the 354.6 is a Canadian national standard based on the ISO standard 16368, which has been in for since 2010, I guess, was the first issue of it. And it was actually based on, it was driven by a group in Europe called IPAF, the International Powered Access Federation, with it, and they were concerned about why all these small self-propelled units and scissor lift type extensible units that they have there's no standard by which they are going to be used safely with it. How are people to operate them? And that became quite popular in Europe. I was at one of the early shows in the Netherlands one time, and that was a big issue there, was how IPAF was spreading. And IPAF has spread to North America. It's driven by the insurance companies and lawyers, of course, but it's quite detailed. And so what B354.6 to cover those self-propelled man lifts and extensible scissor lift type units that can be driven or even stationary, they just sort of cut and pasted. They took some of the things out that would be not applicable to Canadian rules or laws or regulations, and just made that the 354.6 issue. The Americans did the exact same thing. Their ANSI standards, their 382 standards. They cut and paste that too as well with it. But all other aerial devices that they have is within their scope, and that, of course, the vehicle-mounted ones are the ones that were challenging. And we were here first. We've been here since the 70s. We should have home field advantage on that. Same with the A92.2 as well with it. So I don't know if ANSI is challenging that because they have their version of the ISO 350, ISO 16368 as well. The 354 standard, some of the people who are on it used to be with C225 as well, and moved over to that. We're trying to arrange, we've had several group meetings between the two, with both sides stating their cases as to why they should be the national standard for all vehicle-mounted aerial devices. As far as of right now, CSA has not come to a decision on that. Hopefully that's, we have a new program coordinator for our group now, and he's aware of the problem, and hopefully we can get things resolved that way. Oh, and by the way, the 354.6 was issued in 2017, and of course the ISO 16368 latest version is 2024, so they have to actually review theirs now too, is to bring it up to current ISO standards too as well, as to what they want to include with it, or have Canadian deviations for it. And then for the insulated units, there's an international standard, the IEC 61057. The latest version is 2017. I sit on that committee for Canada. There's an upcoming review that just got started on that. The notification just came out about a couple of months ago, and all the countries were asked if they wanted to review the standard, and I looked at the results of that poll, and it looks like the majority, especially here in North America, said yes, let's review this and see what new things we have to put into it. The ISO was I sit on that committee. It was instrumental, and we put in the first of the testing standards for high voltage DC qualification testing for live line work on DC circuits with it. We also put in the first issue at that time for proper identification, testing, and operation of the partial vacuum protection systems that are used on high voltage insulating air devices, specifically the Category A units that are bare hand units where we need it. That was offered by Canada, and also the high voltage DC application testing rules are put in, which are now in both the CSA 225 and the ANSI 892.2 were offered by us here in North America. And a lot of that was due to cooperation from my part with Bill McDermott at Manitoba Hydro and high voltage and Hydro-Quebec's high voltage test lab as well on their big DC lines. So Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro would benefit from that as well because they've got their big 735 kV line that ties in with Hydro-Quebec too. So insulated air devices now can be used as both AC and DC rated units with it. So and IEC, we did that at IEC first because they came up first, and I knew what we had to do. So I said, well, while we're at it, boys, let's put this stuff in here too and get her done. And at the time, Canada had the DC stuff before the ANSI did, and some of the American utilities that wanted to get a DC rating on the units actually followed our standard, the Canadian standard, to set up. Now the Americans came in also with the same DC standards. Edition 3, this is the one that just came in 2024. The problem with that we look at on ours is that for the C225 and the ANSI 892.2, there's some restrictive requirements for it. All of the mobile aero devices that are covered by ISO 16368 and E354.6, it requires platform load sensing. Very restrictive, and I understand why, because the guys who, the vast majority of self-propelled analysts are out in the rental industry with it. And the training isn't always as good as it should be with it. And so they've had an awful lot of experiences with rollovers on it, overloading of platforms with it. So that got included into the 16368, and it's now in the 354.6 as well with it. So if we're going to try to adopt some of that as well, load sensing was specifically in the IEC 61057 was specifically not recommended, because the live line units have to work in a varying field intensity that surrounds those live lines. And the sensors that are usually used to provide that load sensing are not immune to that field intensity. It can vary, it can be, especially when you're bonding on and off a line, you've got huge varying charging currents and field effect coming into that basket as you're doing that. And how do you shield that load sensor from sensing that and tripping out? The standard right now says at 100% of the load, it triggers an alarm and or shuts you down. So even, and I didn't read anywhere where it says don't take into that it should be immune to dynamic loading, so bouncing around with it. It's just, I don't see anything where it says a static load should trigger it. So that becomes a questionable thing then. If it's a dynamic load, how do we incorporate that into it? And one of the things that we're concerned about is that part of the duty cycle where you're bonding onto that line, and you're first drawing that capacitive arc as you're trying to bond onto the line. What happens if your load sensing picks up that and shuts you down right now? Now I haven't made contact with the line yet, but I'm still drawing that arc. What do I do with it? I can drop one maybe, and it'll disengage with it. I can pull it back, but it's going to ionize here and come with it as it comes by. And I watched a guy do that one time and jump right to the nose with it. He was being a good cowboy, shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff, but he was playing around with it, and he got it. And it was on a high voltage line. It put him right to his knees when it happened too. So you don't want that to happen. But and I know when I do my operator training for the insulated units, that's specifically what I do. It's just not a game. You put the bond on and you keep it on until you're ready to come off the line. But anyway, so that's one of the things. And also on stability-wise, there's that load moment sensing that they're looking to as well. With it, again, how do we control that too as well on our type of units with it, especially if you've got material handling with it? How do we put those sensors in on that too as well? We don't use a whole lot of live line insulated load sensing like with a winch anyways, but so that's all part of it. So those are things we're going to be questioning on it before we included it with the C225, with it, let's see what's up on next here. The one other thing that is actually probably a good thing with the ISO standards is the 18878, which just got reissued this year. And part of it is included in with the 354 series of standards too as well. But it does talk about the operator training with it, and it's quite detailed. And this is something that A92 is looking at, A92.2 is looking at, and we're going to be looking at for our next issue too as well. Right now, it's a pretty vague statement in there. It talks about familiarization with the operation and sufficient time for the trainee to demonstrate proficiency in the operation of all aspects of the equipment. Pretty vague with it. There's another standard that's going to be coming up here that details it even more, that is going to be followed, that we're going to have to look at incorporating it into ours as well. But the big thing on the operator training itself is it goes through on the B354.6 as well, and 0.7, 354.7, it goes through all those things you're supposed to cover when you're doing the operator training with it. Right from the get-go with it, where's the manual? What's in the manual? Are you aware of it all? As a trainee that you're aware of all this that's going to happen with it. And the proficiency of the evaluation of the operator. With it, we sign things off on that. Some people have actually started saying, when I'm making out my report at the end of it, should I be saying, we did this, and each trainee signs off saying yes, and a check mark, yes, I did this. You know the lawyers are driving that one. Because they're going to say, oh, something bad happened? You learned this, you signed off on this, so there's no, you're the one who's liable for it, not your poor employer that put you up into this basket with it. As I always say to when you're up in a basket there, you're a team when you're working up there. Yeah, you might have one guy operating in that basket as well, but the rest of the guys aren't spectators up there. They should be talking. You should be talking all the time with each other as you're doing that. Communication is a big thing when you're working, especially when you're working on live lines. So when you're up in the air, so that sort of thing. They talk about planning your route that you're going to do. What type of equipment is the best I'm going to be using for? How do I position the unit to get it where I've got to go with it? That's all part of the ISO standard for it now. And they're actually good points. It's something that really should be taught with it. And I know I've started to include that in a lot of my training now is not so much just how the airport notifies operates, but how do we set it up? How do we access what we got to get to with it? So those are things for the training groups, for the liveline training groups, and that I'm sure they're looking at what they're going to be doing with all that too as well with it. It's going to be something that's going to cause, not going to cause it, it's going to require a commitment by the end users, by the manufacturers to assist and say, this is, if you're going to operate this way, this is how you have to, if you're going to do this job, this is how you're going to have to operate this piece of equipment. As a lot of times I'll tell the operators that I'm training, I said, this air device that's going to put you up there, it's just a tool. That's all it is. We provide, the manufacturers of the air device and the end user provide the operators with a tool to get them someplace to do the job that they have to do on that line or that structure with it. As with all tools, if you don't take care of the tool properly, you know how to use the tool properly, the tool doesn't work well or it doesn't perform at all for you. The only difference with an insulated air device, category A insulated device, if you don't take care of it, it will kill you. Simple as that. So that's something that becomes very important when we get into the training portion of things. So at 225, we will be reviewing this training inclusion into our next issue as well, whether to keep it as a separate category with it, a separate section in it. with it, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of lively discussion that's going to go on with this. So this is the big one on maintenance of the equipment too as well. The ISO 18893 2024, and this is particular to CSA B354.7. Which is issued now too, but it doesn't. But it's not at the 2024, the same as the 2024 edition of the ISO standard. It covers all safety principles, including inspection, which comes into play again, the maintenance of the equipment, and the operation of it. So the operation part sort of ties in again with the ISO 16368 and the B354.6, but so we try to keep them both together, and because definitions of qualifications for maintenance personnel with it. So the nice thing about CUF is you guys have your utility fleet mechanic training certificate that you have for them. A great idea. You know, it took a lot of years for CUF to get that into place, and a lot of people were involved with it. A lot of them are still here. Trevor was here. Bob Moore was here, really instrumental in getting that going with it. Jason Ball as well with it. All those guys. I'm sorry I missed somebody, I'm sure, but I apologize for that. But there was a lot of people involved from CUF that were involved in the development of that, and a lot of support from the industry itself in getting that done. So a big hand clap for everybody in the industry for doing that. And it also talks about qualifications for trainers, and there too as well. How can you be a trainer to train a very technical aspect? Well, there's some guidelines given for it in that, and that's another thing we'll have to be looking at maybe for 225. But you know, how many pages we got in 225 right now? There's going to be a whole bunch more, anyway. So, see, so the C225 right now in section 8.2, you've got the end user responsibilities. We've got a long list of things that should be done by the end user during their yearly inspections and or 3-year maintenance inspections, maintenance testing of the units. So we can either expand on that in 8.2.4 or again come up with another section. That's something we'll be discussing at the meeting tomorrow, how we're going to format the next issue of 225 with it. If you want to read what's currently the rule in Canada, you can get that B354.7 and get that. That's available through the CSA bookstore with it. Same with 225. I strongly, there's a lot of utilities out there that don't even have a copy of C225. And why? Everybody should have a copy of that. Like, if you're buying air devices, you should know what you're buying. And don't call us to say, oh, what should I do with this? Buy the standard and it'll tell you. If you have a question as to interpretation of the standard, yes, call us. And we'll let you know. That happens all the time. They'll say, what do you mean by this? And we'll try to answer. Get done. But, the good thing is there's never a quiz afterwards, so we don't have to worry about it. See if we're right or not. But, Canada does have good representation on international committees with it. Canada also has mirror committees for the international standards, like am I running over my time here? Am I really again? Just hit me with a big glove, come out and hit me. But anyways, the TC 214 is it covers the ISC, the Technical Committee 214 on the ISOs covers 16368, 18878, 18893 standards. Canada has a mirror committee to look at those and then recommends to Canada, do you accept it or not? I sit on that mirror committee. TC 78 is for the live working group, which covers everything from live line ropes, arc flash protection, and 61057 insulating air devices themselves. I sit on that committee, that mirror committee as well. But everybody who sits on these mirror committees here in Canada is old. Not getting old, we are old, and that. So we need to maintain that voice here on it, and we need younger people. Like I'm 72 now. Alan, 80-ish? 82 also? 83? Okay, you know, we do need younger people. We need people to learn as they go too as well. It's tough. There's an awful lot to pick up. There's a lot of history that goes along with it. And that's something us older guys can give you. And ladies too. We got some older ladies in the group too, but we can give you that because we were around. We know when people say, why can't we do this? Well, we tried that 30 years ago and it didn't work. So we don't do that with it. History is a big thing. The old adage, if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? So let's not do that. So if you are interested at all, please volunteer. I thank you all for your time, and you guys apologize to Doreen. Okay, thanks, gentlemen.